In this video, I'm going to show you the 3 mind-muscle states you must hit in every training session if you want to smash personal bests week after week and force your body out of homeostasis and into real muscle growth. But here's the problem. Most people never experience these states because traditional 3 to 5 day training programs make it almost impossible to mentally peak that often. When you're training all the time, you're never fully ready. You're never fully present, and you're never truly peaking in the session. And that's why progress stalls. What I want you to understand today is this. The biggest benefit of high intensity training isn't what it does to your body, it's what it does to your mind. Because when you repeatedly take yourself to the edge in a controlled, safe environment, you build a level of mental strength, belief, and confidence that carries into every area of your life. And once you have that, no barrier feels insurmountable anymore. Let's break it down. Want to go deeper? If you're a busy professional who wants to get strong, lean, and confident without the gym taking over your life, I break everything down step by step inside the 135 body system. Join the 135 newsletter below for deeper insights, real case studies, and behind the scenes thinking I don't share anywhere else. Now, this is really important for you to understand. Muscle building requires more mental strength than physical strength. Now, let me explain why that is. You see, the natural state of human beings is to quit when things get hard. And I know you've probably experienced that so many times in your life. When you see things getting hard, when you need to do something difficult, your natural inclinations is to quit. Isn't that true? It's just to not do it, or just when you feel it getting hard is to stop. Now, the reason we do that is because the body, or life even's fundamental essence or fundamental principle is to survive. Now, you've probably seen this film Castaway with Tom Hanks in it, and it's a great story of survival because your body, all of life, its fundamental role above all other roles is to survive. Now, how do we survive? Our brain acts as a safety mechanism when it feels that we're coming under threat. It puts the brakes on. And one of the ways it does that is that when it feels a drain on energy resources, or it feels its body, your body, coming under threat, it sends out alert signals to stop, to stay away from harm. And what the body loves to be in is a state of homeostasis. Now, you're probably thinking, what on earth is homeostasis? Homeostasis is described as the physiological tendency toward the maintenance of a stable environment controlled internally and coordinated to buffer external changes. The way I like to translate that scientific speech is the body always likes to be in cruise control. So when you've driven your car, or you drive your car, and if you've got cruise control on your car, your body, when you put your car into cruise control, it likes to stay at the same pace, not moving left or right, not accelerating, not braking, just cruising at the same pace in a straight line. And that's what I always like to explain homeostasis as: cruise control. Or a simpler explanation is homo stay sitting. Now, I'm sure you've all felt this feeling, this sensation when you're sat down like Homer here on the couch, having your bag of chips or sweets or crisps or wherever it may be, and you get a call out maybe from your missus or your partner, one of your children, to do something, you don't want to get off of that couch. You don't want to get off of that seat. You want to stay in homeostasis sitting mode. You just want to be in cruise control. But here's the problem. When we're trying to build muscle and grow muscle, the one thing we're trying to do is take the body out of homeostasis. In scientific speech, that process of taking the body and putting it into a muscle growth state is known as hypertrophy. Hypertrophy being the state of taking the muscle or taking the body into a muscle growth state. Now, let me break down what hypertrophy is in simple terms. Hypertrophy is the process of overload and regrow. Overload and regrow. Now, what do I mean by that? Your body doesn't want to go through another growth spurt after the growth spurt you've had when you were a teenager, because that growth spurt requires huge amounts of energy. Now, remember I said the brain acts as a safety mechanism to prevent your body from danger. What it also acts as is trying to preserve energy, because energy is a limited resource. I know in today's world, energy is there at the tap of a button. You can order your Uber Eats or your Deliveroo straight to your door. You can walk down to your fridge, pick up whatever you want, pull out a bag of crisps from the cupboard. Food is at the tip of your fingers. But we haven't always been like that. So one of the brain's mechanisms for survival is energy conservation. Oh, not energy conversation, energy conservation. Now, when we're going through growth spurts, like what we're trying to do with hypertrophy, we're actually trying to get the body to grow again. Now, in order to grow again, your body needs more energy. And what you're also doing is you're overloading your muscles to the point where you're causing micro trauma and micro damage to those muscles. Now, micro trauma, micro damage, your brain is signaling danger, threat, and it's trying to stop you from putting your muscles into that trauma and into that damage. It doesn't know that you're trying to grow bigger muscles. All it knows that it's sensing a threat to its systems. So in hypertrophy, we're trying to overload. And once we've overloaded, we've created those micro traumas and micro damage to the muscles. We then supplement the body with the sufficient proteins and nutrients and rest and recovery so that the body goes through this growth process. But the brain initially is trying to stop you from doing that because it feels threat to its body, and because of the additional energy that's required to grow those muscles, it's feeling a drain on its limited energy resources. Is this making sense? If you're done with fitness programs that demand your whole life, subscribe to this channel. This is where I teach busy men how to build their body and their mind the simple way. So hypertrophy is a process of overload and regrow. In overload, you're stressing the muscles, and in the regrowth process, which you do after training, not in training, you're going through a process of recovery, repair, and then regrowing those muscles so that they're bigger than they were in that training session. Now, if you've ever been to the gym, you would have experienced something like this, where you're at that point where you can see in the guy's face pain, pain in his face, and you probably experienced that yourself. What the body's doing in sending signals to you, please stop. Does that make sense? Please stop. You're putting your body in danger. Now, this is what I say where the magic actually starts. At this point, you can see in the person's face, this is where the magic starts. Why is that? Because at this point and beyond that point, let's say, is where you're going to create that stress, overload, trauma, micro damage to the muscles. If you don't take the muscles to that point or beyond that point, you're not going to spark or give the body the impetus to grow. Is that making sense? This is where you need to take your mind beyond. This is why I said at the beginning that muscle building is more mental strength than physical strength. Look at this guy's face. He's in physical pain, but he's in more mental pain. But the reality is he can actually take his body further than where his brain wants it to go. Why? By the power, or how? By the power of the mind. And I love this statement. The best things in life are the hardest to achieve. Isn't that so true? That the best things in life are the hardest to achieve. Now, if you want to achieve that marvelous muscular physique, you're going to have to earn it. Now, let me give you an example of one of my clients. My son. Now, I'm training my son. As you can see, he's an avid Arsenal fan. Now, my son, whenever he used to train with me, at the point, he's a teenager, right? At the point when things were getting really difficult, he'd always stop. And I'd always say to him, no, you can't stop now because this is where the magic starts. But he'd always stop when the magic starts until I taught him these 3 mind-muscle connections. Now let's look at what these 3 mind-muscle connections are. The first of those is muscle on the mind. Muscle on the mind. Now, what do I mean by that? When you're preparing for your training session, at least a day before, what I tell my clients is to look at your training log from the previous session and look at all the personal best you did in each and every exercise. And what I want you to do is start mentally preparing to physically perform. I want you to go through the motions in your mind and think about all of the personal best that you achieved and how you're going to smash each and every one. So you're mentally preparing to physically perform. Does that make sense? So that whole day or 2 in advance, you're mentally focused. Just like, I don't know if you've ever seen football players when they come to a match. They walk into the stadium, you might see the cameras on them, and they've all got their, their headphones on or their AirPods on, and you can look at their, the true pros. The true pros, they've got a still mental focus on in their mind because they're mentally prepared to physically perform. And that's what I want from each and every one of my clients and what you need to do in order to smash each and every training session. Sometimes you don't improve in every single exercise, but on average, my trainees improve on at least half of their exercises in every single session. Now that's generally unheard of. How are you able to do that? People ask me. This is why, because I get them to mentally prepare themselves. That's not the only reason though. You can't do this if you're training 3 to 5 days a week. If you're going to the gym every weekday, for example, you're never gonna be able to get into this mental focus because you can't peak every single day. That's just physically and mentally impossible. But when you're training only once a week, you have the ability to get that mental state, because you're only training once a week and you want to make sure that that one training session per week is a killer session. So that's what I mean by muscle on the mind. The other mental state I want you to be in, and I taught my son to be in, is to have mind in the muscle. Mind in the muscle. Now, what do I mean by that? When you're at that point, or even before that point, when you're doing your exercises, I want your mind to be inside the muscle of focus for that particular exercise. So for example, if you're doing a bicep curl, I want your mind to be inside your biceps. I want you to focus on perfect contraction. Now, if you're training traditional training programs using weights, that contraction is normally just 1 second long. 1 second up, and then maybe, if you're doing it properly, 2 to 3 seconds down. But when you're training in my 135 body system, we get you to have a contraction that is 10 seconds long. 10 seconds long. Now, why is that so amazing? Because you're removing all momentum from the activity and from the movement and focusing all the energy exerted by the muscle, not by any other muscles. You're trying to lock down the muscle of focus. You're removing all momentum and you're forcing the muscle to do all the work. Now, when you do that, you can have an amazing mind-muscle connection where your mind, and what I like to do a lot of times is actually close my eyes and imagine myself just contracting the muscle. That's all my body is doing in that particular moment in time. It's just focusing on contraction and then holding it when I'm in the isometric phase, and then retraction when I'm in the eccentric phase, and just controlling the muscle movement. Now, that's what I mean by mind in the muscle. It takes time to get there, but if you really want to improve in building those muscles, you really need to get your mind in the muscle. Now, the third of those three states is mind over muscle. Now, what do I mean by mind over muscle? By mind over muscle, I mean when you get to that point of failure, which I'll discuss in another video, when your brain is sending signals, emergency signals, systems down, stop what you're doing, you need to take your brain and tell it to be quiet, because you know that you're in a safe environment. You're lifting the bands, because I always use bands in my training, at a safe pace, at a safe level. Your form is on point, your body structure is strong, so you're safe. Now, those signals you're getting from your brain, because your brain's starting to give you, feel pain, it's getting those sensations, you're feeling stress, you're feeling pain, you need to have your mind over muscle. You need to take your body beyond what it believed possible, beyond where it thinks it's safe, because you know it's safe, as mentioned, and you need to go beyond those limits. Because taking the body beyond those limits, taking the muscle beyond those limits, is gonna spark an amazing muscle growth process, even in your later middle age years. I'm 47 years old. I've got clients that are 53 years old. I've got clients that are 60 years old. And in the weekly meetings that we have in the 135 crew, they're taking their tops off and showing their muscles growing. Because they're implementing these 3 mind muscle connections. They're taking their body beyond what they thought possible, because they're taking their mind over muscle. Is that making sense? Now, I like to summarize it like this. Your brain is receiving multiple sensory perceptions from inside the body and outside the body. And what the brain's trying to do is, one of the fundamental things is obviously it's trying to do is doing multiple things, is help you survive and thrive. Survive and thrive. So the brain deals with the here and now. But your mind deals with the future, where you want to go. This is where you are in your training. So your brain's taking signals from now, but your mind is thinking about who I want to be, the body I want to build. And that's the mind-muscle connection. You see, what most people never realize is that muscle growth is just the side effect. The real transformation happens in your mind. When you train less, but train with intent, you learn how to focus, how to commit, and how to push through discomfort when it matters most. That's why once a week, high intensity training works. Not because it's easier, but because it teaches you how to show up at your best on demand. And once you prove to yourself, week after week, that you can do hard things, that belief doesn't stay in the session. It changes how you live. If this way of thinking resonates with you, I've got a full series on the 135 body system on this channel. Each episode building on the last. Train less, live more. I'll see you in the next one.